And we're live. Major developments happening. I don't normally come to you on the weekend like this, but we're getting word that there's a lot going down with Letitia James as early as this week. So important to bring you up to speed, if you would. We also have that Supreme Court ruling, which is a very, very big deal. Elon Musk is leaving the administration, as you know, and the left is kind of worried that he's not totally, fully, completely gone. Jasmine Crockett going on to MSNBC expressing these concerns. Meanwhile, others are concerned about just exactly how he got that black eye. He elaborates on that. I'm going to take you to some of that sound. Lots going on at this moment as, by the way, Biden comes out and says, you know what, he'd do it all over again. He has no regrets whatsoever. Donald Trump saying, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for him right about now. And Josh Hawley, meanwhile, over in the Senate saying, we need to get to the bottom of what went down. Oh, the black eye I told you about. He's going to elaborate. Welcome to the program, everyone. It's so good to have you here. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't. I've got some really good news. I actually just found out this week we're in the top 100 podcasts. But apparently, we've been in the top 100 ever since YouTube started coming out with this list a few weeks ago. So I saw some Google alerts. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. So, I'm catching up to speed here. We have been consecutively in that top 100, and we hope to continue climbing that ladder higher and higher and higher. So do your part, subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. It means a lot. I'm here because of you. And you are here because you are getting the truth and nothing but the truth, right? Welcome again. Good to have everyone here. We begin on Letitia James because this is kind of just an amazing, amazing story, if you would. It's been amazing from the very beginning. Obviously, her coming out with Donald Trump trying to go after him for this quote unquote mortgage fraud. It was a private transaction, I should point out, between Deutsche Bank and one Donald Trump. And so for her to come in there and try and muscle her way in and suggest that there was fraud going on because apparently he inflated, in her estimation, the value of Mar-a-Lago. I want to repeat that, the valuation of Mar-a-Lago is obviously incredibly subjective, right? Anytime you're dealing with a real estate transaction, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Until you actually sell the place, you don't know its true value. But for her to suggest it was worth, what, $18 million? For goodness sakes, give me a break. You know what, Letitia, that's why you are a politician, I suspect, and not actually in business of any kind. Scott, thank you for the generosity. Much, much appreciated. It is great news, right? That we keep climbing in these numbers. Just incredible, incredible, incredible news. But Letitia James is now going to be going down in history because she's basically done, ladies and gentlemen. This indictment is coming any moment this week. I'm hearing it could happen. It could happen. This week, the grand jury has already just issued these subpoenas, and so people are going to have to come forward. They're going to have to testify as to what she did or did not do. Take a look at this. Remember her comments when she was so excited because she had Donald Trump exactly where she wanted him, allegedly. The judge coming out and saying, okay, you're going to have to pay $500 million. I'll believe that when I see it, because that case is on appeal, and I'm getting a little annoyed because those judges have not come forward with the verdict, which in my estimation will be actually throwing the whole thing out of court. Maybe they're holding it over his head, but she did say something kind of interesting. When powerful people cheat to get better loans, it comes at the expense of honest and hardworking people. Everyday Americans cannot lie to a bank to get a mortgage to buy a home, and if they did, our government would throw the book at them. They simply cannot be different rules. We cannot have different rules for different people. Now Donald Trump is finally facing accountability for his lying, cheating, and staggering fraud, because no matter how big, rich, and powerful you think you are, no one is above the law. You know what, Letitia, this is going to come back to haunt you in an epic and poetic way. Let's go to the head of the Federal Housing Authority, who was one of the first to notice this. By the way, I should point out that the FHA, or rather, I think it's Fannie Mae, is going to be bringing in Planeteer, which is a technology company, to try and look at these mortgages and uncover more fraud. But they found it with her. They found it, or they allegedly found it, I should be careful to say. And it doesn't look good. Here he is.
Recommended that the DOJ investigate New York Attorney General Letitia James over alleged mortgage fraud. The AG, Letitia James, has responded. We don't have the video, but here's the quote. "This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia resident. And prior to that, I indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. They just took the power of attorney, and they're using that as a basis for enforcement of their investigation. Bill, do you know why she said she was a resident of Virginia on the power of attorney, if in fact she wasn't?
Well, I know that we are mortgage experts, and we only refer things that we think are mortgage fraud, and we stand 100% behind the letter. I'll let the letter speak for itself. I do know, and I have seen some reports from that subject, from that subject's criminal defense lawyer, saying certain things. I'll leave it to the DOJ to correct various things. But again, when we see mortgage fraud, we are going to report it. When we see mortgage fraud, we are going to prosecute it within the confines of our duties. And we are not going to be intimidated by a subject's criminal defense lawyer. We are not going to be intimidated by a politician or just because you have an Esquire behind your name. We are not going to be intimidated by people. If we see mortgage fraud, we're going to do something about it. And I think that you're going to see us be taking this on in a big way. Mortgage fraud is a big problem. These companies are safe and sound, but where we see it, we are going to do something about it. And that subject's case is no different.
Well, what are the ramifications of this now that you've referred this for criminality to the DOJ?
Well, I would refer that to the DOJ. Again, as I say, we spend our days, we are mortgage experts. We are not politicians. I view this as an economic job. Obviously, the president can fire me at any time. So I guess in that way. But look, I look at this as an independent agency. We found the mortgage fraud, whether it be that particular subject or other subjects, and we work actively with the DOJ and different law enforcement.
I mean, wow, right? He can't even say her name. He's like, that particular subject, that tissue baby. Hey, by the way, thanks, Leland. I just saw the note in the super chat there. He got a couple of the Live Free or Die cups from the Trish Regan store. And Scott, thank you so much for your generosity. Too male, too pale, too stale. Proud of it, I see. All right, guys, this is what she is being charged with, okay? If you have not been following the show and you're not familiar with this, we've gone through this quite a bit. So we've been all over this story from the very beginning. It's of significance to me, perhaps because I've spent my entire career as a business reporter. And so of all the cases, right, this one really stuck out at me as just being so egregious and so wrong. And, for her to go after him to the tune of $500 million, $500 million, it's just absolutely outrageous. And again, we're waiting on that one to be thrown out of court. Yet simultaneously, she's getting hit with this whole other thing. I mean, it was bad enough what she did with him. But here, what's being alleged is that she was falsifying documents to get a better mortgage rate on her federal housing application loan. I mean, this is federal money. This is our taxpayer money. FHA loans are insured by the federal government, okay? We're the ones insuring that. So when you come up with possible victims, you're going to have a lot more victims in that particular case than you would with just, say, a private commercial transaction with Deutsche Bank. Lying on an FHA loan application, especially about primary residence status, that's a federal offense, okay? Federal offense, punishable up to 30 years in jail. The FHA requires the property to be the borrower's primary resident within 60 days of closing. Now, she's just saying, okay, nothing to see here. This is nothing but just a clerical issue, nothing more. But you got to wonder about that, given that she is a lawyer, right? And therefore, she should have known better. And by the way, there's a history of this stuff going on. Letitia's now going to face up to 30 years in prison for violation of 18 U.S.C. 1014, false statements to obtain a federally insured loan, 18 U.S.C. 1001, false statements to the government. Elise Stefanik, ladies and gentlemen, Elise Stefanik, the representative from New York that took down effectively, in my estimation, she really took her down, Claudine Gay over at Harvard University. She is somebody who's been all over the Letitia thing from the very beginning, just like us, and she had actually put forward a request for the Bar Association in New York to disbar Letitia because she was using her power unfairly, right? She was reckless in her power. And so that's one whole other issue that's sort of laying out there in the background. But, this is the most immediate one, and that the grand jury is now issuing subpoenas, and we could see her indicted as early as this week. Here's Stefanik saying, quote, I commend the FBI and the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of New York for investigating New York Attorney General Letitia James over mortgage fraud. Nobody's above the law. Right, Letitia? These serious allegations, falsifying records to secure favorable terms on properties in Virginia and New York, threaten public trust in our institutions. The hypocrisy is staggering, she writes. Tish James allegedly committed the same crime that she falsely and illegally prosecuted President Donald Trump for. That's the sort of poetic operatic Shakespearean Greek tragedy, although, for those of us on the other side, we see it just as justice of this entire issue. Take a look here. She goes on to say that the actions embody, by Tish James, the corruption that you've seen in New York overall among elected officials. She puts Governor Kathy Hochul in that. She puts Albany's Democrats, which tried to, together with the governor, secretly insert language into the state's budget in order to cover up that Letitia James was going to be using some $10 million in a taxpayer slush fund to cover her Abby, Lowell, legal bills. I mean, this is an expensive, high-priced attorney that had actually worked for Hunter Biden. Kind of incestuous, this whole thing, right? So she's saying that's totally wrong. It's an insult, she said, to New York taxpayers. You better believe it. Again, Letitia's defense is this is just a clerical issue, nothing to see here. That's what her lawyer keeps pointing to. And he's issued a letter to one Pam Bondi effectively saying that. But again, I go back to, you're a lawyer, you should know better. This is the home in question. So she's getting federal funds for her mortgage, all right? And she puts in on this mortgage that it was her principal residence. So even if you want to say, okay, that was a mistake, that was a clerical error, how do you explain this? New York is now investigating this one because Letitia James has this brownstone in Brooklyn that she said was only 4 stories because what do you know? You actually get a better rate on the mortgage if it's 4 stories instead of 5 because of, again, some federal housing stipend thing that they give you, some kind of public assistance. I'm like, can you just stop living off the dole? I mean, one of you guys brought this up the other day in terms of the Norfolk house. You were like, oh, wait, her niece lives there. She's proud of saying, I got this house from my niece. Well, we hope the niece is not taking any federal money or state money in order to pay for that house, right? Because then it really starts to get sus. And then, well, you want to talk sus. There was, of course, the mortgage that she got with her dad in which she claims she was his wife. Yeah, so they could buy this little number right here. I mean, it just is really concerning. And if you listen to Stephen Miller, who's been all over this as well, the president's domestic policy chief, one of the things that he's pointing out is that there's this consecutive sort of serial thing happening, right, with Letitia and all of these allegations. It's not like one time, it's multiple times, and you got to take that into account.
Letitia James says the allegations against her are nothing more than a revenge tour by the Trump administration. What's your response?
My response is that Letitia James is one of the most corrupt, shameless individuals ever to hold public office. She's guilty not only of those crimes, but of countless more crimes by using and abusing her public office to try to persecute an innocent man, depriving him of his rights, engaging in a conspiracy to obstruct our election, and to overthrow our democratic processes and procedures. She is guilty of multiple significant serial criminal violations.
Wow. So again, she would say just a clerical thing, but I suspect where there's smoke, there's fire. Here's Letitia's defense. She actually had to address this in New York this past week. Let's listen in.
As you know, we filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump and his family. We secured a $454 million judgment against him, which is on appeal. The case is on appeal. I have no idea when that case will be decided. This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia, but prior to that, I had indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. And in the mortgage application, I indicated that I would not live in Virginia and I was not a resident. They just took the power of attorney and they're using that as a basis for enforcement for their investigation, when in reality, the power of attorney was never used to determine my eligibility for a mortgage for my niece for a home in the state of Virginia. My niece who has children.
Her niece, right? That she got the house for because she's a good aunt. But again, then why are they investigating you? She said it's retribution. I don't think so. I think it's a combination of things. I mean, sure, look, you did something kind of bad, going after Donald Trump in the way that you did. The other one that needs to be looked at is the crazy judge and Gorin, or Arthur and Gorin, however you say his name, that came up with the wild penalty of $500 million. That was all designed, ladies and gentlemen, to prevent Donald Trump from running again. But guess what? He ran and he won. And so now, his DOJ is now looking into this because you can't have mortgage fraud, period. And so, the subpoenas are going out and her polls are sinking in the meantime. Look at these numbers. Unbelievable. Her campaign's stumbling. We talked about this a little bit this week here on the Trish Regan Show because City Journal came out with a piece just yesterday saying the campaign's on the ropes. I mean, they're going to vote her out. They really will. New York voters have very little patience for this. She's got some support in New York City, but you go anywhere else in the state, they do not like Letitia James, what she has done, what she represents. Take a look at the latest poll numbers. You can see everybody's been talking about Chuck Schumer and how vulnerable Chuck Schumer is, vulnerable possibly to one AOC. Well, the real vulnerability here, that would be one Attorney General, Letitia James, because when you add up her favorable and you compare the unfavorable to the, we're not sure kind of thing, what you're looking at is a 60-40 situation, and she's in much worse shape than she has been at any point before. Why do you think that is? I think it's because people don't like what she represents and what she's doing, and the fact that she's using taxpayer money to try and defend herself in this personal lawsuit. This is more information regarding the poll. Siena College Research Institute poll from earlier this year found that James has more favorable poll numbers than Kathy Hochul, so Kathy, watch out, but that her favorable-unfavorable split is worse than anyone would expect for a Democrat Attorney General of New York. And so she's clearly underwater and viewed negatively throughout the state. And it's no wonder. I mean, you look at some of these issues that voters care about in the state of New York, and by the way, care about federally, and she's just not there. Buddy, thank you so much again for your support and generosity. We are thrilled to be in the top 100, absolutely. But here, I'm going to get your comment in a second. Letitia at odds with voters on immigration, 79% backed deporting immigrants that were convicted of a crime. That's in New York. Heck, we showed you the soundbite. Even Whoopi Goldberg in New York was like, well, I don't have a problem getting rid of criminals who have, committed some kind of crime and that are here illegally. Like, everyone is kind of in agreement on that. And yet Letitia is out there trying to defend all of these illegal criminals from ICE. So she's clearly, once again, at odds with her constituency. 39% backing deported immigrants with no criminal record, 42% opposed. So you have nearly 40% saying, you know what? I don't care. You don't even have a criminal background. If you're here illegally, I want you out. That's the state of New York right now. 59% say we don't want to be paying for their medical care. Only 26% are in favor of paying for medical care. Once again, at odds with where Letitia is. Because Letitia is part of the crew that was like, we'll put them up at the Roosevelt Hotel and make sure everybody has the cards for the ethnically appropriate food to the tune of $300 and some odd a week. I mean, people in the state of New York, especially upstate, in the western part of the state, they're like, I don't think so. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And then 48% do support the federal efforts to deport all illegal migrants. So this is a huge issue, you see, and she is not in sync, not one single bit, with her constituents. Her constituents actually feel a heck of a lot more like one Stephen Miller, who's been all over immigration. Check this out.
I am, and that's why I said that. I clarified that.
You said undocumented, and I wasn't clear what that means. I'm assuming they have a fake ID. I'm assuming they have a fake social security number.
That's neither here nor there.
That's
getting away from the question, Stephen. I want this to be, and call me naive, a good faith discussion about what's happening right now.
But when we use language that's designed to obscure the truth, that's not good faith.
An illegal
alien is an illegal alien. They're not an undocumented migrant.
Okay, that's fine. That's another discussion for another day.
Another discussion for another day. He's great. I'm going to show you a little bit more of him. Peace of my mind. Good to see you. And again, I'm seeing all of your generosity. This is amazing. I think we've got kind of a new audience here today. I'm seeing some regulars, but we've got new people joining us. So please make sure that you subscribe, you share, you comment, all that good stuff. It's really important right now to help this. God Family USA, thank you. Look, it's not about, I agree with you, it's not about color, it's not about race, ethnicity. It's about doing doing what's right. I hear you on that one. Absolutely. Look, yeah, and Feast of My Mind, we are number 52 and climbing every single day. So we're in the middle, but we want to break out of the middle pack, right? And get right up there in the charts. It's incredible, actually. I'm just totally honored to be part of that 100. Buddy Sanders saying, if you lie on a VA loan, see how fast you get charged. So if you're lying on a veteran's loan, you're going to be charged as well. I mean, this is just the reality of the world. You can't do it. Meanwhile, she's got voters that don't agree with where she is. And so all of this leads to my assumption that she is out as AG. I mean, not to mention, like, you saw what happened in Wisconsin with that judge that was trying to help an illegal migrant escape the courtroom before ICE came in, somebody who had been charged with allegations of domestic violence, and so the judge is trying to get him out. Well, what happened to her? They said, sorry, you're going to leave your post. You can't stay on. So there's a few things going on. I mean, you get the federal government indicting you for something like this, Letitia. I don't know how New York keeps you on unless you can really pull some strings. And then it becomes, do the voters keep you on? And I think, judging by some of the evidence and the poll numbers I just showed you, the answer to that is no. On top of which, right, the media can't stand her now. That's a surprise. So the media is actually turning on her. The liberal media, Letitia James is caught in a war of her own making. They're saying at New York Magazine, very liberal publication, reading to you from that, they write, it's a fact beyond reasonable dispute that Letitia James weaponized her official power as New York's Attorney General to pursue Donald Trump for political purposes. Wow. Okay. Wow. So when you lose the liberal media tissue, baby, I mean, it is game over. Here they go on saying that, basically this was wild that they found Trump civilly liable for fraud and slammed him with damages amounting to over $500 million. It was crazy, including mounting interest. But during the trial, they write, James made a series of wildly inappropriate out-of-court statements. Yeah, too male, too pale, too stale, right? That would ordinarily get a prosecutor fired. At one point, she publicly branded Trump and his family members as liars while they were testifying. So here's the question. Where the heck is the New York bar? Why aren't they actually getting rid of her? Because she's way overstepped, right, her bounds. It is terrible. Absolutely terrible. She had a victimless case. Everybody knows it. The appellate division of the court, the publication writes, voiced pointed skepticism of James's victimless case and seemed poised either to substantially reduce the verdict or throw it out. You better believe it. Listen to the judges. As soon as the woman who's arguing before the appellate court, her name is Judith Vale, she comes to the bench and they shut her down immediately.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated...
Ms. Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved the consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
Boom. So why the heck was it brought? Oh, we know why it was brought. They were trying to make sure that they bankrupted him, not to mention tried to put him in prison, right? But this was the civil case. They wanted to bankrupt him. And the irony of it all now is that somebody else may be left bankrupt, or at least with very little money. She's trying to use taxpayer funds to fight this legal battle with Abby Lowell, as we have said, as her very high-priced, expensive attorney, and that's not flying. Again, with the media, not flying. New York Post is all over this. You saw what Elise Stefanik is saying. They are very, very angry, and even New York Magazine, the liberal New York Magazine, is saying, you know what? This is kind of over the top. She has again displayed dubious ethics, dubious ethical instincts in her response to a pending inquiry. She has inexplicably chosen to use the resources of her public office to respond to the investigation. James issued a statement through the AG's official spokesperson, blah, 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 saying that she's going to use the state's funds to cover some of her legal expenses. They're like, whoa, that is a bad idea, right? A really bad idea, because you're stealing effectively from the taxpayers. Oh, you're so great, Scott. Thank you so much. He's saying, we need you 7 days a week. Pretty soon, at some point, you may actually see me. Again, I'm just hearing through sources that this is coming very, very fast. So we'll see whether or not it does this week. But I figured it was important to bring this to you because it is a story we have been all over. And when I say this is poetic, when I say it is Shakespearean or, operatic in its level of justice, it really is. Because do not forget, this is the woman that wanted to bankrupt him. I do recall her saying to ABC News, you know what, if he doesn't have the money to pay the $500 million, like anybody just has that hanging around in cash, well, we're going to have to confiscate his assets. She was hanging out outside Trump Tower. She apparently was at one of the golf courses in New York as well. She wanted to take the whole darn thing. Well, Tishy, you know what? Before it's all said and done, they're going to be coming for your house, that one in Virginia.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Well, maybe somebody's going to have to seize your assets, or you're going to have to sell your assets, honey bunny. There's some play on words, but I won't go there. I'm looking at some of the comments. Jeff Hansen saying, she campaigned on this, and you're absolutely right. She did campaign on that, which in and of itself is so unethical and terrible. The whole thing is just so bad. But you know what? Like, where there's a right, there's a wrong. Where there's a wrong, there's a right. I mean, you think about how the pendulum swings. And now the news that these subpoenas have gone out and that her indictment could be coming as soon as this week, I think it shows you just exactly that justice is being served. Justice is being done. 30 years is the penalty she faces. Now, I don't think that she's actually going to be looking at up to 30 years, but that's the reality. 18 U.S.C. 1014, false statements to obtain a federally insured loan. She is in a lot of hot water, a lot of hot water, and it's kind of good to see. You know what else is really good to see? This big win that we're seeing for the Trump administration on immigration. So one of the sticking points has been, can you actually get rid of some of Biden's big orders that he put in place? By the way, we don't even know how they got put in place, right? That's another question that we're going to get to a little later in the program, because Hawley's now out. Josh Hawley is saying, hang on, we need an investigation into how this all went down. Because if he was just, making the auto pen do everything, and he wasn't with it, and he wasn't actually engaged in all this, and Hawley's heard some really interesting things from Secret Service, then we really can't allow for these orders or these pardons to exist. So this is a big deal. But one of these things that he put in place was an allowance for people to come here, 532,000 people actually, non-citizens from the likes of Venezuela and Nicaragua and Haiti, as well as Cuba, to come here from these places and live freely and get work authorization, etc. Other legal protections they were given for 2-year periods. And that is being undone. The Supreme Court said, you know what? we agree with Donald Trump. Donald Trump's team came forward and said, you know what, we're going to fight this out in court. But in the interim, we'd like to be able to get rid of this special parole program for migrants. And the court said, okay. So that's a huge development, a huge win. Donald Trump weighing in on this, as well as Joe Biden. Joe Biden, yesterday afternoon, I want you to listen.
And I asked Caroline this yesterday, but I want to ask you directly. So many of the things that you're trying to do are held up in court right now. If the courts are going to have so much influence over U.S. policy, do you wish you would have just become a judge instead?
Yeah, well, look, it wasn't meant to be that way. If you look at the founders, the president had certain powers, and you have your three groups, and they all had supposed to be pretty equal powers. But you can't have a judge in Boston running foreign policy in places all over the country because he's got a liberal bent or he's a radical left person. That's what the executive branch is for, and you have checks and balances. But we had millions of people pour into our country, many criminals poured into our country, murderers, mental institutions from all over the world being emptied out into our country. And if we don't get them out and get them out quickly, could lose your country very easily. This is a bad, that anybody would allow this to happen to our country. You know, with all of the things, we took over inflation, we took over some wars, we took over a lot of problems that didn't exist when I was president. None of it existed. We wiped out ISIS. Other than that, we had no wars. Putin was never going to hit Ukraine. Israel would have never been attacked. That attack, as you know, Iran had no money. They didn't have money for Hamas. They didn't have money for Hezbollah. They had no money whatsoever. That wasn't going to happen. All of these things that happened weren't going to happen. You wouldn't have had inflation. So it's very sad when I came back. But the thing that is the hardest is that they allowed 21 million people into our country, and many of those people are stone-cold criminals. They moved their criminal population into the United States, and of all the things that are bad, I solved inflation, I believe, already. I got the fuel prices down. The fuel prices came down. That's one of the reasons they screwed up the energy. They screwed up the cost of gasoline and oil and gas, and you had tremendous inflation, the greatest inflation probably in the history of our country under Biden. And when people said, oh, but the economy was, no, the economy was terrible for the people because they couldn't afford the energy. And the energy brought everything else up. Energy is the big
He's
deal.
So right on this, by the way. I'm just going to say.
We solved that already. In 4 months, we solved it. $1.99, $1.98 gasoline. First time people have seen that in a long time since my term.
Amazing.
But the hardest thing to solve is millions of people pouring into our country, many of whom are criminals. Because remember, these countries are smart. Their leaders are very street smart. They're sending the people that they don't want. They don't want the people that are there, that are law-abiding, that are productive, that are working hard. They want people that are in jails. We have them. They allow them to come in. And I always look to the other side, like, why would somebody do something? In business, I try and study, why would they want to do this? Why would they want to sell it? Why would they want to buy it? One thing I can't figure out is what would an administration, what were they thinking when they allowed millions of people from prisons all over the world, not just from South America, Venezuela, all over the world, from the Congo in Africa.
Like, really, what was that about?
Thousands of people from the Congo.
I get the open borders thing, but do you really want the worst of the worst?
Asia, from Europe, rough parts of Europe. Why would they allow them to come into our country? Why would they do that? It's the one thing I can't figure out. And I don't believe it was Joe Biden. I really don't. I mean, look, he's been a sort of a moderate person over his lifetime, not a smart person, but a somewhat vicious person, I will say. If you feel sorry for him, don't feel so sorry because he's vicious. What he did with his political opponent and all of the people that he hurt a lot of people, Biden. And so I really don't feel sorry for him. But he wasn't a person that would allow murderers to come into our country.
And then he goes on to say, but he's still, I don't feel sorry for him because of all the things that he's done, but I don't get this. Like, he wouldn't have necessarily allowed for this. So who is the one allowing for it? And I think this is the question that's going to just keep coming up over and over and over and over again. Right, Josh Hawley making this point as well, saying that this was a guy, Joe Biden that is, that was not in the best of shape. In fact, he was really suffering from some pretty significant decline. I mean, we've talked about this. Here he is. This is about a year ago. They start asking him questions.
I'll get in trouble.
He says, I can't take questions, I'll get in trouble. And then he looks like he's going to pass out.
Super Tuesday said, do you have a message for voters? Thanks, come on.
It was awkward to watch. This is actually March, so forgive me. It was about a year ago. Not even. Okay, so then we've got, Biden clearly declining. I mean, remember the invisible chair thing where it looked like he was sitting. There was a chair there, by the way. There was a chair. And he kept trying to say, he was just out of it. Like really, really, really out of it. And that was so clear, right? That became so clear finally in the debate. But as you look at Donald Trump saying all of these things about Biden, and now you think about all the things that happened and the auto pen that was at work, and you guys, I'm looking at your comments in real time. You're saying, some of those pardons have to be rescinded. I think they will. And so Comer's launching an investigation there in the House. And now you've got Josh Hawley over in the Senate saying, we've got the biggest scandal in political history on our hands. Let's listen.
One of the senators on that committee, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, joins us with more. Am I overstating it when I say this is the biggest White House presidential scandal in history?
No, I don't think so, Sean. And listen, I'll tell you something that I haven't said before because it came from a Secret Service whistleblower this past year. I talked to so many of them after the attempted assassinations of President Trump. But this Secret Service whistleblower actually was assigned to Biden, and he told me that Biden used to get lost in his closet in the mornings in the White House. I mean, the guy literally stumbling around in the White House residence couldn't find his way out of his own closet. The president of the United States. I mean, this is outrageous. We were lied to. And Sean, you know as well as I do, the press has a huge role in this. I mean, the press actually is really important in America. They're supposed to report the truth. It's what you do every night. It's not what the liberal media did, though. They sold this country out for years, and they did it for power, and they need to be held accountable as well.
The media does need to be held accountable. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited for what we've been able to create here. And I told you guys over and over and over again, I said, how are they going to run him? How are you going to run Joe Biden? And eventually, of course, they didn't. They put Kamala in. But what's crazy is if you think about this, what could have happened, right? What could have happened, and again, this is good news on the Supreme Court thing, and we're seeing some of these wins here for Donald Trump. But what could have happened is you could have had a scenario where you got 4 more years of Joe Biden. Could he have made it? I mean, he had an advanced stage of prostate cancer. We now know that. And what's crazy to me is that they weren't willing to say any of this. And if you're not willing to actually come forward with the truth until so far after the fact, what kind of jeopardy are you putting the country in? It's something that Lara Trump said recently, and I want to play this sound for you. She's making the point that they were covering up this cognitive decline, and had her father-in-law not won, I mean, we might not even know about it, right? Because we were the cheap fakes. They kept telling us when I would show you video of Joe Biden and his cognitive decline, we had to be super careful. I had to say, look, I'm not a doctor, but this doesn't look good to me, because somehow this was being misinterpreted as fake news. It's like, guys, I can see what you all see. Why is it so outrageous for us to point this out? Anyway, let me go to Lara speaking on Fox News about this.
There's also been a lot of discussion recently about your mental and physical capabilities while you were in office.
You can see that. I'm mentally incompetent, and I can't walk, and I could beat the hell out of both of them. I'm very proud. I put my record as president against any president at all.
Former President Biden cracking jokes about his mental fitness in his first public remarks since his cancer diagnosis.
But Republicans aren't laughing.
Lara Trump was one of the few who called out his decline early on, and she joins us now. She's the host of My View on Saturday nights. Great to see you, Lara. So it really is kind of amazing to look at that clip right there. For during the entire 4 years of his presidency, I have no idea what he's saying, and I didn't even get that he was joking until somebody explained it to me.
Yeah, is that what that was? Was that supposed to be a joke, Charlie? I'm not
Right.
sure either. I think we're all still struggling to interpret what Joe Biden is saying. But that's really the scary part of all of this. And, you know, you look at November 5th of 2024, that was a day that really determined a lot for the future of America. Obviously, Kamala Harris at that point was the Democrats' nominee. But you think about the fact that had Donald Trump not won this election, guys, we would not even be talking about this. Jake Tapper wouldn't have a book out. The liberal media would not be actually talking about the fact that Joe Biden's decline was so severe. And I mean, it's really frightening. I think we're looking at one of the greatest scandals in American political history.
She's right. Okay, and we're going to get back to this major win on immigration, I promise. But it is one of the biggest scandals, if not the biggest scandal, certainly in modern history. I mean, this is unbelievable. And, you know, the fact that we have to put, you know, they call them, you know, chyrons, or you have to put the words up on the screen when Joe Biden's talking because nobody understands him. I mean, that's not a good sign. And I think any way that you look at this, you're either looking at a shoddy doctor, right? And he should have had better medical care. I mean, you can't be the president of the United States and not have good enough medical care. So it's either a scandal because they did not get him the proper medical care, or it's a scandal because they covered the whole thing up. And it's pretty concerning, again, when you think of the damage that was done. And Donald Trump's right on inflation, tremendous inflation under Joe Biden at one point, reaching double digits in terms of producer prices that were going up. We were up around 9.6% inflation for consumer prices. Don't forget, even though, you know, when it goes down to 3%, like, it's still cumulative. It's up 9.6%, and then it's up another 4% or 5%. And then, you know, they're like, woohoo, it's down to 2%. But I'm like, you know, guys, I mean, it's already up here. So you had tremendous inflation. You had an international situation that became increasingly precarious that we remain stuck with today, let's face it. And you had a border that was out of control. Now, as we try and get that border under control, you have judges all over the place, district court judges, some 700 of them, deciding they know better. Stephen Miller's not having it.
Do you think a judge should just rubber stamp what your White House does? If not, what checks and balances do you think should be in place for this White House?
It is not the job of a district court judge to perform an individual green light or red light on every single policy that the president takes as the head of the executive branch. Just think about the premise baked into your question, respectfully, Pam. You're saying that when the American people elect a president of the United States of America,
I'm not saying
well, it's the implication, who is the sole head of the executive branch. Well, let me finish. I will answer the question happily. But look, when you have these kinds of lazy assumptions built into questions, it makes it hard to have a constructive dialogue.
What is a lazy assumption? I said you all had to win.
You said no. You said is it my expectation?
I'm speaking
you
because
said,
now you're putting.
You said is it my expectation? It's not just you. It's the whole media. In other words, when you
I know
hear
you
a
want to
sentence
loop
like
us on. It is a completely fair question. You say judges rule against the White House.
And I will gladly answer it. When you say, do we think district court judges should rubber stamp each action? There is a premise that is built into that is absurd. The president is the sole head of the executive branch. He's the only officer in the entire government that's elected by the entire American people. Democracy cannot function. In fact, democracy does not exist at all if each action the president takes, foreign policy, diplomatic, military, national security, has to be individually approved by 700 district court judges. That's democracy. So if there's 15 communist crazy judges on the court, that each of them as a team working together can block and freeze each and every executive action.
Wow, right? I mean, he's right. So what's going on? They just are like resist. They've got pins that say resist. That's the whole idea. They don't actually want to get anything accomplished in this country. And you do have to wonder, like, what the point is on the let's have an open border thing. I mean, it's bonkers. Now, there's a new sort of development in this. We talked about it a little bit this week. One of the migrants that DHS has named as a concern is being, according to the left, unfairly targeted. So according to Kristi Noem and DHS, they're saying this migrant has made threats on the president's life, saying that he would like to take him out and then, will be deported or face the consequences after. Now, the left has come forward and said, no, this is actually not true, that this guy is being framed. And Miller was asked about this on this same CNN interview. You know, you got to appreciate Miller. I'm running a lot of him today. I did yesterday too, because it's spectacular. He's so raw and honest, but he understands the law and he has a definite viewpoint. And what's funny is he's not willing to put up with any of the BS or any of the civilities that the CNN people think that they should have in place, right? Including the language that they use, etc. For example, he got after that woman because of the use of the term undocumented. He's like, what does it mean undocumented? Like you're using a false ID? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, here he is speaking on this migrant threat as she raises the issue of the unfair targeting of this particular person. And not to give it all the way, but he's basically like, I'm sorry, you had me at illegal.
Undocumented migrant sent a letter threatening to kill the president, promising to self-deport after the assassination. CNN reporting shows that investigators believe the migrant was set up. It was a victim of a setup. What is the administration going to do now? And this is an undocumented immigrant. I do want to note that, but this was someone who came forward, was a victim of a crime, and now law enforcement believes he was set up. Go ahead.
Well, I want to clarify what you mean, so we're talking about the same thing. Are you saying this immigrant was here illegally?
Yes, but I am, and that's why I said that. I clarified that.
You said undocumented, and I wasn't clear what that means. I'm assuming they have a fake ID. I'm assuming they have a fake social security number.
That's neither here nor there.
That's
getting away from the question, Stephen. I want this to be, and call me naive, a good faith discussion about what's happening right now.
But when we use language that's designed to obscure the truth, that's not good faith.
An illegal
alien is an illegal alien. They're not an undocumented migrant.
Okay, that's fine. That's another discussion for another day.
I don't know the details of the assassination threat. All I can say, based on what you're telling me, is there's an illegal alien in our country who's making menacing threats. Regardless of the facts or circumstances, we don't want him here. We're going to get to the bottom of it, and I would gladly come back on when I have more information to share with you.
They were set up, just to be clear. But quickly,
so
where is the White House on habeas corpus?
The illegal alien was treated unfairly. Yes, I'm sure the illegal alien was treated very unfairly.
Where is I think that's the point. It's like, you know what? You probably shouldn't come here because you're going to run into a whole host of problems, and they're making that really clear. And they kind of don't have a problem with somebody being treated unfairly. And, you know, you can talk about whether that's right or wrong, but he's making the point that you're here unfairly. You're here, you know, under unfair circumstances because you came here illegally. Michael Elon, thank you so much for your generosity. I appreciate it, and I'll check out your show. You know, it's good to see so many new people. Peace of my mind, pointing out and welcoming so many here today. Welcome aboard to John Royhella. Welcome aboard to all of you. We have been growing so fast here on the Trish Regan channel, and we are thrilled to announce that we are in the top 100 podcasts on YouTube, and actually have been for 3 weeks. But I didn't mention it until yesterday because, you see, I don't obsess over numbers. I'm psyched about them, but I actually didn't quite realize it until it came up in a Google alert. What do you know? Anyway, this is a huge win for the Trump administration, any which way you slice it, on this Supreme Court decision. The other thing that's going down right now is that they're looking to defund so many of these sanctuary cities. They're looking to deport, by the way, 3,000 people a day that are here in the country illegally. So Stephen Miller, once again, making the airwaves saying, hey, if you're here illegally, we are looking to deport you. Obviously, criminals are coming first, but they're looking to put 3,000 people out of the country a day and actually increase that as time goes on. So if you're a sanctuary city and you're standing in the way of this, then guess what? You're going to lose your federal funding. So this is pretty, you know, severe. It's one of the things that Letitia is suing over, but so far she's out of luck. They're getting rid of all federal funds in the state of New York because Kathy and Letitia and the head of the DMV are not complying with ICE. And so now the mayor is stuck, you know, trying to deal with this because he's actually on the side of Tom Homan. But this happened all over the country. 30 different sanctuary cities and states are feeling the effects of this. Let's go to Miller.
Pushing
to get that number up higher each and every single day so we can get all of the Biden illegals that were flooded into our country for 4 years out of our country. And we can't take the risk of letting these Biden illegals roam around freely so that the next American daughter can get raped, the next American kid can get murdered, the next American family can get splintered and torn apart by people that came into this country unchecked, uncontrolled, unvetted, uninvited by the American people. As to the reconciliation bill, Sean, there's been so much said about how incredible the big, beautiful bill is, the largest tax cut and reform in American history, the most significant energy reform, unlocking American energy in American history, deregulation like we have never seen before, the most significant, largest welfare reform in American history. But the bill also includes the complete fulfillment of President Trump's campaign promises on every aspect of immigration and homeland security so that we can have permanently the safest, strongest, most secure immigration system in American history, Sean.
Just amazing, right? Just amazing. Harvard University now feeling the effects of some of these immigration policies. Students there with visas are now being faced with the reality that they may have to leave the country. It's coming just as President Trump announces that he's getting rid of the federal funds that were going to Harvard to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars a year because, Harvard just really, Harvard isn't what it once was, right? We're going to get to Donald Trump's comments on Harvard in just a moment. He wants to make Harvard great again. But first, this issue of the visas being in jeopardy, let's touch on that.
The president's authority to prevent foreign nationals from entering the country is one of his greatest and highest authorities. He is operating at the apex of executive power when he does so. Congress, likewise, has codified and cemented that authority by giving the Department of Homeland Security and the Secretary of State plenary authority to reject the entry of foreign nationals into this country, which is what makes that Harvard ruling from this crazy judge so obscene. Harvard defied multiple DHS subpoenas for information about its foreign students and about law-breaking and national security threats on campus. Harvard has engaged in decades of invidious, unlawful, and illegal race-based discrimination against American citizens. So Harvard is engaged in illegal and criminal conduct, and a judge is siding with Harvard's right to pad his pockets with foreign cash over the rights of American citizens and the American Constitution. The Democrat Party's philosophy right now is for foreigners, everything, for Americans, nothing. President Trump is fighting for American workers, for the blue-collar workers, and for the middle class of this country.
He's not wrong. I mean, so slashing the funds at Harvard, I don't think anybody's going to, have much in the way of tears over that. Again, Donald Trump saying Harvard better get its act together because Harvard is not really playing ball. He's making the point that Harvard is still obsessed with all this DEI stuff, which has been decided on actually by the Supreme Court for Harvard, right? So you can't continue down this path. And he highlights this week in a recent appearance. I believe this happened about 48 hours ago. Let's listen.
How will the confrontation with Harvard end? Do you foresee?
I don't know. I don't know. Harvard's got to behave themselves. Harvard is treating our country with great disrespect. And all they're doing is getting in deeper and deeper and deeper. They've got to behave themselves. I'm looking out for the country and for Harvard. I want Harvard to do well. I want Harvard to be great again, probably, because how could it be great? How could it be great when you have Harvard announced 2 weeks ago that they're going to teach remedial mathematics, remedial, meaning they're going to teach low-grade mathematics, like 2 + 2 is 4. How did these people get into Harvard if they can't do basic mathematics? How did they do it? I mean, people with 1,600 on their boards don't get in, and they're letting people in, and they're bragging about how they're teaching them basic mathematics. Where did these people come from? So we have to look at the list, and Harvard has to understand the last thing I want to do is hurt them. They're hurting themselves. They're fighting. Columbia has been really, they were very, very bad what they've done. They're very anti-Semitic and lots of other things. But they're working with us on finding a solution. And, they're taking off that hot seat. But Harvard wants to fight. They want to show how smart they are. And they're getting their ass kicked.
There, you know what kicked. All right, tell us how you really feel. Elon Musk is leaving the administration. As you may or may not know, you get the left like doing a party dance because of it. I think it's a huge loss. I think he's been tremendously valuable. However, because he had this special sort of appointment that ended after a certain amount of time, ended at the end of May. And so, as much as the left wants to make what they're trying to make out of it, that's not really the case. Anyway, we'll get to that in a second. But more important news first, did you see the black eye? Oh my goodness, he's got a black eye. So of course the media asked about this, and he had a good sense of humor about it. Fortunately, he was out of Brigitte Macron's way.
Mr. Musk, is your eye okay? What happened to your eye? I noticed there's a bruise there.
Well, it wasn't. I wasn't anywhere near France, so.
What does that mean?
He's got a sense of humor.
I didn't notice his eye.
First Lady of France.
I didn't notice.
So, I was just horsing around with little X, and I said, go ahead, punch me in the face, and he did. It turns out even a 5-year-old punching you in the face actually does.
That was X that did?
Yeah.
X could do it. If you knew X,
I saw his mom right now. But I didn't really feel much at the time, and then I guess it bruises up. But I just horsing around with the kids.
I didn't notice it, actually.
Anyway, so that X, watch out for X. One of the other things that, of course, had to come up was the recent New York Times piece that accused him of drug use, among other things. It was very unflattering. And so he had some choice words for the New York Times.
10 years ago, if we'd been told that
Oopsie daisy. That was Macron going after none other than Elon a little while back. Macron apparently doesn't like Elon very much, so it kind of makes it funnier. Macron pointing out like how annoying this is that we have to deal with the likes of Elon, on the world stage. But so of course it makes it a little bit funnier that he said, oh, well, I wasn't there with the Macrons. Donald Trump actually talking about this as well. Have you seen it? If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. Apparently Brigitte, who's quite a few years older than her husband, like 25 years older, is definitely like large and in charge, like in a not so good way. They're trying to say like this was all fun and games and they were horsing around, but it's not clear that that's the case. I'm going to show you the tape. We'll look at it together. And if you look at the body language of him trying to extend his arm to her after as they're departing the plane, she doesn't seem very happy. So something went down. Okay, here they are. We're watching. If you're listening to the audio podcast, thank you. When she's the one, right, that is that much older. Anyway, so again, Elon's out, and he was making a joke about the Macrons. I'm going to see if I have Donald Trump talking about the Macrons, because he spoke with them, actually, after this happened. Let's see. Here we go. I think it is.
I think it was an important thing. I think it was a necessary thing, and I think it will have a good effect in the future.
Thank you, President Trump. This week there was a video on board a plane that showed the First Lady of France slapping her husband, Emmanuel Macron. Do you have any world leader to world leader marital advice on those
Make sure the door remains closed. That was not good. No, I spoke to him, and he's fine too. They're fine. They're two really good people. I know them very well, and I don't know what that was all about, but I know them very well, and they're fine.
What do you think about?
Yeah. He doesn't know. No one really knows. And we prefer it that way. Again, she took up with him when he was just a kid. There he is. Fourth from the right there in high school, like 14, 15 years old. It's totally a wild, crazy story. Anyway, they were doing this press conference because Elon is out. Elon is out of the administration. We all knew this was coming, but, it doesn't stop the liberal media from going on and doing this party dance and then putting out some really negative stories, including the one that we saw in the New York Times alleging all this drug use, etc. So he was asked to comment on this, and he roasted him good.
The president mentioned that you had to deal with all the slings and arrows during your time at Doge. There's this.
Some of the people, some of the media organizations in this room were the slingers.
Well, so there is a New York Times report today that accuses you of blurring the line between.
Is the New York Times, is that the same publication that got a Pulitzer Prize for false reporting on the Russiagate. Is it the same organization?
I got to check my Pulitzer. My Pulitzer counter.
It is.
I think the judge just ruled against the New York Times for their lies about the Russiagate hoax, and that they might have to give back that Pulitzer Prize. That New York Times. Let's move on.
That kind of tells me he might be suing the New York Times. Think about it. I mean, the New York Times is making these allegations, and now he says something like that. It does suggest to me, as he mentions that, they're probably going to have to give back that Russiagate Pulitzer, that maybe he's looking at going after them for that story. They did move on, and we'll move on to what the left is saying right now. Jasmine Crockett doing her little party dance on MSNBC. This is the representative from Texas. Leslie, I saw you in the chat earlier. I know. I'm sorry. She's from your great state. I don't know what happened. That's that redistricting. Someone else mentioned, actually, that may have been the motive behind bringing all the migrants into the country, 532,000 of them, non-citizens from those 4 countries, because you wanted to put them in certain places so that you could engage in that redistricting and therefore get hopefully more Democrats. That was the method to their madness. It makes sense. Anyway, here's Jasmine speaking out on Elon's departure on that lovely little network MSNBC. I'm going to just say, before I play this, you can understand why this network is last in the ratings. It's worse than PBS. Just watching it is like watching paint dry. Listen to the tonality, even of their hosts, and how slow they speak and how boring the whole thing is. I'm like, guys, really, you just should go work for NPR, because MSNBC is supposed to be a for-profit unit. Is it not? You are boring.
Joining us now is the Congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, who serves on the House DOGE subcommittee. Congresswoman, welcome to the weekend. So just your thoughts on Elon Musk and his departure from Washington.
Hallelujah is what I gotta say. Is it Sunday? Let us all give thanks to the good Lord above. Listen, let me tell you something. He is gone, but the Musk is still going to linger in the air. We know, as you went through in your intro, that there are so many people that have been impacted by these ridiculous and not thought out cuts. And it's not just the federal workers. It's those constituents of ours, our citizens, that are being impacted the hardest by these cuts. And so here it is. You basically let this guy run wild. And honestly, I feel like all of the cuts to federal employees, that was nothing more than a distraction for the things that he really wanted to do.
Here's the thing. There's a real sort of fundamental difference going on in terms of how people like Jasmine Crockett and AOC see government versus, say, Elon Musk and other business owners and Donald Trump, and probably you, and certainly me. And the fundamental difference is basically socialism versus capitalism. The Jasmines of the world and the AOCs of the world, they want to have all the money, right? They want to make sure that they get all the money so that they can spend it as they see fit. Therefore, government budgets need to get more and more and more bloated. Whereas Elon's coming in and the Doge team is coming in and saying, hey, you know what? We got to give this money back to the taxpayers because it's rightfully their money. Why are we spending so much? I believe, that the individual is the best sort of executor of the distribution of capital, fundamentally, hands down, because the government is going to go out there and spend it on, trans operas in Colombia or making sure that, there's a transgender comic book in Peru. I mean, crazy stuff, right, guys? Really crazy stuff. And so, again, this is why it's so critical that the individual has these rights. Jasmine, meanwhile, is so flipped out that, Elon's Musk is still there and he's not totally out, and what that's going to mean for constituents of hers. What it should mean is, again, more money back in the hands of the people.
Congresswoman, yesterday in the Oval Office, it didn't exactly sound like Trump and Elon Musk were completely breaking up. He sounded like he might still be lingering in some unofficial capacity. Yet, he had to end his special. He was at the final day as a special employee. How is the House Oversight Committee going to keep holding Doge and Elon Musk accountable?
You said keep. We never started. Doge was just a little pet project for Marjorie Taylor Greene to be able to say, hey, they gave me something. I've got a gavel. And so, you know, the last Doge hearing that we had, it was on trans folk doing fencing. I mean, we were talking to people that don't get any federal dollars whatsoever, and dealing with that. We have a Doge subcommittee hearing coming up, and it's to talk about NGOs and basically to go after them. We have had a hearing on PBS and talk about why it's important to, quote unquote, defund PBS. I mean, we've not dealt with those things. We have tried to subpoena Elon Musk before. The Republicans did not want to do that. I don't know why you wouldn't want to have your main man come in and tell us about all the great work that he's doing, unless he absolutely isn't doing any great work. So
she's worried, you know, he's still there somehow, some way, and that he's still going to have some effect. Listen, I do think he is still there somehow, some way. And even though he said, okay, I'm pulling back from funding my political stuff, I don't think he's totally out. And I'm going to go to my former colleague, Jesse Waters, on this, because he actually said it really well, sort of using his liberal colleague there on the panel as though she were the entire Democrat Party or one Jasmine Crockett. As he talks to her, listen to what his point is about how Elon Musk learned the hard way just exactly how rough it is, right, in Washington, D.C., how miserable it is in Washington, D.C., and how bad these people are. And so he's probably going to have sort of some kind of PTSD from it, and the reality or the outcome of that will be that he's going to stay involved. Watch.
And try to put the man in prison. They're going to try to bankrupt his companies and investigate the hell out of him. You think he's not going to give anymore? You are I'm not going to say the word idiot, but you've made a huge mistake and you don't realize how dumb it is. Also, you're saying how much you need men. Young men idolize Elon Musk. They want to be him. They want to be based. They want to ride around in his trucks, and they want to hang with big balls. And now every time you attack Elon Musk, you're attacking all of the young men that you need for your party to survive. You're attacking a living legend. We're talking Rockefeller, Ford, Jobs. Who's against him? Booker? He's a footnote. Liz Warren, what has she ever done? This man's expanding civilization. He's cut spending. He's actually found fraud.
Where?
You've never found it, Jessica.
And while he was doing that, he rescued astronauts that they then mocked while they praised Katy Perry.
Yeah,
No one praised Katy Perry, to be clear.
He's like... She didn't look great, that shot. He's juggling like heroic acts, and you guys are chirping at him for the silence. You had your chance. You didn't cut spending. You didn't find fraud. You made Kamala Harris the AI czar, Jessica. This is like you're upset because he set a $2 trillion goal and didn't hit it. Okay.
He ended up with $9 billion.
He did more than you did. He did more than anyone has ever done in about 3 decades, Jessica. This is like a fan. Every NFL season.
Just let someone else talk.
No.
Anyway, they're terrified he's not done. I hope he's not done. Kevin O'Leary also had something interesting to say on this, and that's that, you know, Washington is a rough place, and Elon certainly got the Washington treatment, and yet was doing amazing things. Take a look.
I've learned a lesson that Elon just learned. No one goes to Washington and returns unscathed. It is an incredibly nasty place. And I've been going there now for 3 years because the businesses I'm in, particularly data center development, require support of governors and senators. I just have to do that. I've learned a lot about that place. You need thick skin, and he just got that lesson doled out to him. The closer you get to the sun, the more your feathers get burned. And you just got to understand you need some feathers to keep flying. She can't burn
It's a good point, right? So they don't like him, but you know what? They've never liked him. I mean, think about it. He's the guy who created the entire EV industry, and yet what are we looking at right now? Take a look here. Actually, Rob sent this to me from 76 Research, you know, my company, financial research company, this morning. He was traveling out and about today, and we got rid of the license plate so that you wouldn't have to see that. But somebody actually put Toyota on their Cybertruck, right? So like this is the sort of ramification of Elon sticking his neck out. But we are so lucky he did. So lucky. I mentioned 76. Please go check that out. You know what? Consumer confidence is up. It looks like we're going to get some kind of tariff deal there in Europe. Lots of good things happening in this market. The jobs numbers coming in very good for the last month. We'll see how they are this month. 76research.com. You just use code word dollar. This is my company. I started with Rob, and we want you to succeed. Take a look at some of these portfolios that we have at 76portfolios.com. Income builder, inflation protection, lots of dividend plays in both of those, and then American Resilience, which is more of a growth-oriented portfolio. But all of this is designed to help you grow your investments, and I hope you're investing right now. It is important to be doing that. Again, we're super psyched because we're in the top 100. I mean, it's actually kind of a big deal. These are not just political podcasts. I should point out that this is with all podcasts that are on YouTube, and we're in that top 100. So number 52 right now and climbing. You guys are a big part of that success. You are that success, I'll be honest. I mean, I am only as good as my viewers. So I can sit here all day and talk, and if you're not listening, if you're not engaging, then we don't have a show. But you are listening, you are engaging. We're up to, I think one of you guys was saying 824,000 now on the sub growth. So just amazing stuff. Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. You know how committed I am to this show and to all of you. So we will be back here live, if not tomorrow, of course on Monday. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. That way you know exactly when I'm live. It's important to do that. And we will continue the discussion. Letitia Baby's going down. Could be this week. I'll see you very soon.